My wife decided we needed a temporary separation so she could experience life without responsibilities. I signed the papers she brought home. What happened before she asked to reverse that decision wasn't part of her original plan. My wife left the separation papers on the kitchen island next to my coffee mug, right where she used to leave grocery lists. "I just need to feel like myself again," Meredith said. "Not someone's wife. Not someone's anything." I signed them 2 days later, at that same island, with the same pen she'd used to write half our grocery lists for 6 years. She watched me do it and didn't say thank you. She just exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath since the day we got married. 14 months after that, she called me on a Tuesday and asked if we could talk. Not about logistics. Not about the storage unit, still holding half our furniture. She wanted to talk about us. She said, like the word still meant something. By then I wasn't the man who signed those papers anymore, and that was never supposed to be part of her plan. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I should say up front that I didn't see it coming, even though people who knew us swore later they did. Meredith and I had been married 6 years, together for 9. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party in Plaza Midwood, back when I was 26 and still renting a room in a house with 3 other guys from my old lacrosse team, and she was finishing her master's in public health at UNC Charlotte. She wore a green dress. She laughed at something I said about the caterer's tiny quiches, this real laugh, not the polite kind, and I remember thinking, very clearly, I want to hear that again. For a long time I did. We got married in a barn outside Davidson when I was 29. I'd just made senior broker at Palmetto Freight Solutions, which doesn't sound like much unless you know what the first 4 years of freight brokerage do to a person. The 5 a.m. calls to carriers, the accounts you lose because a competitor undercut your rate by 40 cents a mile, the nights you sit in your car in a Harris Teeter parking lot because you can't go inside and be a normal person yet. Meredith used to bring me dinner in that parking lot sometimes. She'd sit in the passenger seat while I finished a call, unwrapping a sandwich for me like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's the version of her I carried around for years. That's the version I signed the papers hoping I'd get back. The cracks didn't show up all at once. They showed up in a Sunday morning, maybe 4 years into the marriage, when she mentioned, almost as an aside, while scrolling her phone, that her friend Priya had quit her nonprofit job to just travel for a while, no plan, no guilt. Meredith said it with something in her voice I didn't recognize yet. Envy dressed up as approval. "That sounds nice," I said, not really listening, still thinking about a load that had gotten stuck at the Georgia state line. "Does it?" she said. "You don't even remember the last time we did something with no plan." I remember thinking she was talking about a weekend trip. I didn't understand, not for a long time, that she was talking about her whole life. The second crack came about 8 months later, over something so small it embarrasses me to write it down. We were at her cousin's baby shower in Fort Mill, and somebody asked Meredith when we were going to catch up and have kids of our own. She smiled the way she always smiled at that question, polite, practiced. But in the car afterward, she went quiet in a way I'd learned to read as dangerous. "You don't actually want kids yet," I said. "Right. I don't know what I want," she said. "That's the problem. Everybody keeps asking me like it's already decided. Nobody's deciding anything. We can talk about it whenever you." I said I don't know, Cole. Her voice cracked on my name, just barely. "Can we not do this in the car?" We didn't do it in the car. We didn't really do it anywhere, not properly, not for another year. We just kept driving home from things, quieter each time. I want to be fair to her here, because if I'm not fair to her, none of this means anything. Meredith wasn't unhappy because I did something monstrous. She was unhappy because somewhere in her late 20s, she'd built a life around being responsible for other people. Her mother, who called her for every decision after the divorce. Her job, coordinating public health outreach for 3 under-resourced counties. Me, in the years when freight brokerage ate every ounce of my attention and left her managing everything else, the house, the finances, the emotional weather of our marriage. She was tired in a way I didn't fully register because I was tired in a different way, and we mistook parallel exhaustion for partnership. By year 5, we weren't fighting. That would have been easier, honestly. We were just failing to reach each other, over and over, in small rooms. The pressure that finally cracked things open wasn't dramatic. It was money, mostly, and my mother. My dad had a stroke that spring, not fatal, but bad enough that he needed help for a few months, and being the only son, that help fell mostly on me. I started driving to Rock Hill twice a week after work, sitting with him while my mother ran errands she'd been putting off for weeks. Meredith came a few times at the beginning. Then work got busy for her too. Budget season at the department, grant renewals, the kind of stress that doesn't show up as a single bad day, but as a slow erosion of patience. And she stopped coming, and I stopped asking her to. And something quietly closed between us that neither of us named out loud. Around the same time, Palmetto lost its biggest client, a regional produce distributor that made up nearly a third of my book. My income took a hit right when my dad's medical bills started arriving. I picked up extra hours prospecting new carriers and shippers, working the phones till 9 some nights from the kitchen table, and Meredith started eating dinner alone in front of the TV instead of waiting for me. "You're not really here anymore," she said one night, not angry, just flat. "Even when you're here. I'm trying to keep us afloat," I said, which was true, and also the kind of true that misses the actual point entirely. She didn't answer that. She just took her plate to the sink and rinsed it longer than it needed rinsing. The sentence that changed everything came on a rainy Thursday in March, almost 7 years into the marriage. I remember the rain because it was loud against the windows, the kind of Carolina downpour that makes you feel like the house is underwater. Meredith was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop closed in front of her, which was unusual. She never closed it, she always multitasked, and I knew before she said a word that something had shifted. "I want a temporary separation," she said. "Not a divorce." "I'm not saying divorce." I sat down across from her slowly, the way you sit down when you suspect the chair might not hold you. "Okay," I said. "Talk to me." "I don't know who I am outside of being responsible for people," she said. "I've been responsible for my mom since I was 19. I've been responsible for you, for us, for the house, for... I don't even know when I stopped being a person and started being a job. I need to find out if there's anything left underneath all of it. I need to do that without a marriage attached to me while I figure it out." "So what does that mean?" I said. "Practically, it means I move out for a while. No pressure. No deciding anything permanent. I just need space where nobody needs anything from me." I asked her, carefully, if there was someone else. I had to ask. She looked almost hurt that I would, which told me the honest answer was no, and somehow that made it worse, not better, because it meant there was no villain to blame. Just her, wanting out from under the weight of being needed. "I need you to sign something," she said 2 days later, sliding a folder across the island. "Not divorce papers. A separation agreement. My cousin's a paralegal. She helped me put it together. It just protects both of us financially while we figure out what this actually is." I read 4 pages of legal language about shared accounts and the lease on the townhome, and who kept what, and somewhere in the 3rd paragraph I understood that whatever this was called on paper, it felt exactly like the first page of an ending. I signed it anyway. Some part of me, the part that had learned patience the hard way, working carriers who ghosted on delivery windows, learning that pressure never gets you what begging can't, believed that giving her room was the only version of love I had left to offer. She hugged me before she left with the second load of boxes. It lasted for seconds. I counted. The apartment felt enormous for the first 3 weeks. I kept setting 2 coffee mugs out of habit before catching myself and putting one back in the cabinet. Her side of the closet stayed empty in a way that somehow took up more space than her clothes ever had. My best friend Trevor came over that first Friday night with a 12-pack and absolutely no plan to talk about feelings, which is exactly what I needed. Trevor and I had known each other since college, and he ran a small commercial insurance agency out of a strip mall near South End, the kind of guy who could turn any conversation into a joke within 4 sentences, which used to annoy me and now felt like oxygen. "You gonna be one of those guys who gets a dog?" he asked, halfway through his second beer. "I don't know what I'm gonna be." "Don't get a dog yet. Get a dog in like 4 months. Right now you'll just project the whole marriage onto some poor golden retriever." I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. It surprised me how much I needed that. The first month, I mostly just went through motions. I went to work, closed loads, drove to Rock Hill to sit with my dad, who was slowly getting his speech back, and came home to an apartment that smelled like takeout containers I kept forgetting to throw away. I texted Meredith twice that first week. Nothing dramatic, just logistics about mail and a subscription we needed to cancel, and she responded both times within the hour, polite, distant, like a coworker. The 3rd week, I stopped texting first. My mentor at Palmetto, a woman named Diane Castellano who'd built half the carrier relationships that kept the company running, noticed something was off before I said anything. "You've been quiet on the floor," she said, catching me in the break room on a Wednesday. Diane was somewhere in her late 50s, had been in freight since before electronic logging devices existed, and had a way of asking questions that felt less like an interrogation and more like she already knew the answer and just wanted you to say it out loud so it'd be real. Going through some stuff, I said. Marriage stuff? I must have looked surprised, because she laughed, not unkindly. Cole, you've worn the same expression my ex-husband wore for about 8 months before he told me he wanted out. I'm not psychic. I'm just old. I told her, in pieces, over the next few weeks, what was happening. She never told me what to do. She just kept saying one thing, in different ways, until it finally landed. You can't build a person out of waiting, she said one afternoon, watching me stare at a rate confirmation I hadn't actually read in 10 minutes. Whatever happens with Meredith, happens. But you gotta build something regardless. Not for her. So you're not just sitting in an apartment, hoping the phone rings. That sentence sat in my chest for a long time before I did anything with it. The first real decision I made for myself, not for the marriage, not in reaction to anything, just for me, was signing up for the CTB certification through the Transportation Intermediaries Association. I talked about it for 2 years and never made the time. It felt small, almost embarrassingly practical, studying broker compliance and cargo liability law at my kitchen table 3 nights a week instead of doom-scrolling my phone waiting for a text that wasn't coming. Diane noticed. There he is, she said, when I mentioned I'd passed the exam. That's the guy who used to close deals nobody else could close. Where'd he go these last few years? He got tired, I said. Yeah, well, welcome back. I didn't tell Meredith about the certification. It wasn't for her to know. That was new, too. The idea that something could matter without needing her approval to matter. 6 weeks into the separation, I ran into her at a Trader Joe's on Selwyn, both of us reaching for the same brand of coffee out of some stupid muscle memory neither of us had bothered to update. She looked good, rested, in a way I hadn't seen in a long time, wearing a jacket I didn't recognize. Hey, she said, and there was something careful in it, like she wasn't sure which version of me she was going to get. Hey yourself. We stood there for a second too long. How's your dad? She asked. Better. Talking again mostly. Thanks for asking. I think about him, she said. I should have kept coming with you. It's fine. It's not really. But thank you for saying that. She shifted the basket on her arm. You look different. Different how? I don't know. Lighter maybe. Or heavier. I can't tell which. She smiled a little, the real kind, just for a second, and it hit me somewhere I hadn't expected. I should get going. Yeah, me too. We didn't hug. We didn't exchange numbers we already had. She just walked toward the register, and I stood in the coffee aisle a minute longer than I needed to, holding a bag I'd already decided to buy, feeling something that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite relief, just a strange, unfamiliar quiet. 3 months in, my income started climbing again, not dramatically, but steadily, the kind of growth that comes from actually doing the unglamorous parts of the job well. I picked up 2 new shipper accounts through a referral from a carrier I'd vetted carefully instead of rushing. The kind of relationship building Diane had been trying to teach me for years while I was too distracted to absorb it. My commission checks stopped being a source of dread. I also started running again, something I hadn't done consistently since college. Just 3 miles most mornings along the Little Sugar Creek Greenway before work, headphones in, nobody needing anything from me for 30 minutes. It didn't fix anything, but it gave the day a shape that didn't depend on her. Trevor noticed the difference before I did. You seem like a person again, he said one night over wings at a place in Noda. Not like a happy person necessarily, but a person. For a while there you were just kind of a guy-shaped absence. Thanks, I guess. I mean it as a compliment. You were rough to be around, man. I love you, but you were rough. I laughed, and it didn't feel forced. The setback came in month 5, and it came from a direction I wasn't guarding. A carrier I'd vetted too quickly. The one exception to the careful habits Diane had drilled into me. No-showed on a produce load worth almost $11,000 in freight charges, leaving a shipper furious and my name attached to the failure. I'd skipped a step in the vetting process because I was tired and wanted to hit a number for the month, and it cost the company money and cost me, for a few weeks, the trust I'd been rebuilding with Diane and with myself. You know what you did wrong, Diane said, not unkindly, sitting across from me after the client call where I'd apologized more times than I could count. I rushed it. You rushed it because you wanted to prove something. To who? I didn't have an answer for that one right away. Later that night, alone in the apartment, I understood it was still her. Still Meredith. Some part of me had been trying to build a number impressive enough to hand her, like proof, like evidence I could present in a case I hadn't realized I was still building. That was the moment I actually started separating the growth from the girl. Not because I stopped caring about her. I hadn't, not even close. But because I finally understood that if the only reason I was becoming someone better was to win her back, I hadn't actually changed at all. I'd just gotten better at performing for an audience of one. I went back to basics after that. Vetted every carrier properly, no shortcuts, no matter how good a load looked on paper. It cost me a slower month. It also meant I didn't lose another shipper's trust for the rest of the year. The apartment stopped feeling temporary somewhere around month 6. I'd bought real furniture instead of borrowing folding chairs from Trevor's garage, a couch that actually matched, a bookshelf I put together myself on a Sunday afternoon with the game on in the background, not because I needed noise to fill the silence anymore, just because I liked football. Small thing. It meant something anyway. My dad was mostly recovered by then, walking with a cane he complained about constantly, back to needling me about the Panthers' offensive line like nothing had happened. My mother stopped calling me in a panic every other day. Life, in the parts of it that had nothing to do with Meredith, was quietly getting better. I didn't hear from her much during that stretch. A text here and there, a question about whether I'd canceled the internet under my name or hers, a one-line, "Hope your dad's doing okay," after my mom must have mentioned something at a family thing. I answered them plainly and didn't linger. Not out of spite. I just didn't have the old pull anymore, the need to turn every text into an opening. Diane pulled me into her office in month 7 to talk about something that had nothing to do with Meredith at all, for once. A lane out of the Charlotte inland port that she thought I was ready to run point on. A bigger book of business than I'd managed before, mostly reefer freight moving produce and pharma up from the southeast into the mid-Atlantic. It meant real money if I did it right. It also meant real risk if I didn't. "You ready for this?" she asked. "I'm not asking if you're capable. I know you're capable. I'm asking if your head's actually here." "It's here," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it without having to convince myself first. "Good. Because I'm not carrying you through this one. You either close it or you don't." I closed it. Slowly, over 6 weeks of careful carrier vetting and rate negotiations that didn't always go my way, but the account held, and it held because I did the boring, patient work instead of chasing a fast number. My income that year ended up almost 40% higher than the year before, not because of one big swing, but because I'd finally started running my book the way Diane always had, relationship by relationship, instead of transaction by transaction. I still didn't tell Meredith any of it. That habit stuck. Whatever I was building it because Diane had said something true back in month 1. You can't build a person out of waiting, and somewhere along the way I'd stopped waiting. I saw her twice more before the call came. Once at a mutual friend's wedding in October, where she was seated 3 tables away, and we exchanged maybe 90 seconds of polite conversation near the bar, both of us careful, both of us pretending the small talk didn't cost anything. She'd cut her hair. She asked about the inland port account. Someone must have mentioned it to her, and I told her, briefly, and she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Not pride exactly. Something closer to recalculation. The second time was an accident, a work thing of hers, a health fair at a community center in Steel Creek that I ended up at because Trevor's fiancée volunteered there and dragged us both along on a Saturday. Meredith was running a booth about maternal health resources, laughing with a coworker, completely in her element in a way I hadn't seen in years, not performing competence, just living inside it. She saw me before I saw her. Her face did something complicated, surprise folding into something softer, and we talked for a few minutes near the parking lot afterward, careful and a little too polite, like 2 people handling something breakable. "You look good," she said. "I mean that. Not enough. I just mean it. You too. I heard about the account. The port thing. Word travels. Diane mentioned it to my mom, believe it or not. Small world." She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear, a habit I still recognized instantly. "I'm glad, Cole. I mean it. I know that probably sounds strange coming from me." "It doesn't," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. We didn't exchange numbers again, because we already had them. We just stood there a beat too long before she said she should get back, and I said the same, and neither of us moved for a second longer than made sense. The call came on a Tuesday, 14 months after she'd first put those papers on the island. I almost didn't answer it. I was in the middle of confirming a delivery window with a carrier out of Savannah, but something made me pick up. "Hey," she said. "Do you have a minute?" Not for logistics. I mean an actual minute. I've got a minute. There was a pause, long enough that I almost asked if she was still there. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said finally, about what I actually wanted when I asked for the separation and what I got, and whether those are the same thing. And they're not, she said. I thought I needed to disappear from being needed. And I did need that, for a while. I'm not saying I was wrong to ask, but I think somewhere in there I convinced myself that needing nothing from anyone was the same as being whole. It's not. It's just a different kind of empty. She stopped, like she was deciding whether to keep going. I miss you. Not the version of you that was drowning at that kitchen table every night. This version. Whoever you've become on the other side of this. I didn't say anything right away. Not because I didn't feel something. I did, immediately, a kind of ache I hadn't let myself name in months. But because I'd learned, the hard way, that the fastest answer usually isn't the truest one. I'm not the same guy who signed those papers, I said finally. I don't know if that's what you're picturing. I know that. That's not a bad thing, Cole. I think that's the whole point. Can I think about it? I asked. Not because I don't want to see you. Because I want to actually mean whatever I say instead of just wanting to feel better in the moment. Yeah, she said. And there was something like relief in her voice, like she'd expected me to be too eager, and was almost grateful I wasn't. Take whatever time you need. I told Diane about the call the next day, sitting in her office with 2 coffees neither of us had touched. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know yet. I thought I'd know the second she said something like that. I've thought about her saying something like that for over a year. And now I don't want to just fall back into being who I was because she finally said the thing I used to want to hear. I want to know if there's an actual us on the other side of this, or if I'm just tired and lonely and she's familiar. Diane nodded slowly. That's the first genuinely grown-up thing I've heard you say about that woman in 6 years, she said. Doesn't mean the answer's no. Just means you're finally asking the right question. I met Meredith 2 weeks later, not at our old place, not at the townhome full of memories, but at a coffee shop in South End neither of us had history with. Neutral ground, her idea, and I respected that she'd thought of it. She got there before me. She had 2 coffees already, and when I sat down, she slid mine across the table, and for a second neither of us said anything, just looked at 2 paper cups between us like they meant something. I'm not asking you to just come back, she said. I know that's not fair, after everything. I'm asking if you'd be willing to actually date me again. Slowly, like we don't already know each other, even though we do. I don't want to skip the part where we find out if the people we've become still fit together. That sounds like a good way to do it, I said. The right way, maybe. Better than either of us has done anything else in this. I know I hurt you, she said, putting those papers down like that. I've thought about that morning more than I've told you. I signed them, I said. I could have fought you on it. I didn't, because some part of me knew you needed the room, even if it scared me to give it to you. Would you have done anything differently? Looking back, I don't know, I said honestly. I think I needed the room too, even if I didn't know it yet. I just didn't call it that at the time. We sat there another hour, careful, unhurried, talking about small things mostly, my dad's recovery, her new position at the department, Trevor's engagement, testing the shape of something neither of us wanted to name too early. When we left, she didn't hug me. She just touched my arm for a second, light, like a question rather than an answer, and said she'd call me Friday. She did. It's been 4 months since that coffee. We're not back together in the way people mean when they say that. No lease, no rings back on fingers, nothing declared to our families beyond. We're figuring things out. We see each other twice a week, mostly. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's not. There are conversations we still have to have carefully, old wounds that flare without warning, a wariness in both of us that wasn't there 9 years ago and probably never fully leaves. But last Sunday, she came by the apartment, the one that stopped feeling temporary somewhere around month 6, and she noticed the bookshelf I'd built, ran her hand along the top of it, and asked when I'd learned to do that. Same time I learned a lot of things, I said, while you were gone. She looked at me for a second, something unreadable passing behind her eyes, and then she smiled. The real one, the kind from the engagement party 9 years ago, the kind I used to think I'd lost the ability to earn. I'm glad you learned them, she said, even if I'm the one who made you. I didn't correct her. She wasn't entirely wrong. But I've come to understand something in the months since that Tuesday phone call. She didn't make me into this person. She left, and the leaving created a space, and I was the one who chose, morning after ordinary morning, what to build inside it. Whatever happens between us now, that part is mine. Nobody handed it to me, and nobody can take it back. We're taking it slow. Neither of us knows exactly where it ends. But for the first time since she put those papers on the counter, I'm not waiting for an answer. I'm just living and letting the answer come when it comes.